This is official. You can become an anesthesiologist in the USA without doing any residency. How do I know this? I'm an anesthesiologist in the Philadelphia area and I did my residency in India. In this video, I'm going to share my personal experience and secrets on how you can become one. This is a detailed video. If you like anything in particular, I have left timestamps below and you can scroll down. But I encourage you to watch full videos so you don't miss out on any critical steps like where to find the program, how to apply, where to apply, what happens to the visa, USMLE, and many other things. The first step is, let's go to my home office. Here's the first thing to do. Let's do this together. Go to Google and open the American Board of Anesthesiology, commonly referred to as the ABA website. I will leave the link in the description below. In the USA, the ABA is the final authority that certifies doctors as anesthesiologists. This may be people trained in the USA or from outside. Ultimately, the ABA has to certify, and this is when the anesthesiologist becomes board certified. Now let's look at myself. If I click on American Board of Anesthesiology, and then I go to what is called as Diplomate Directory, I click on this, I click my name, Rajiv Iyer, and say I'm not a robot, which obviously I'm not, then click Submit. You see my name. So this means I'm a board certified anesthesiologist. Anesthesiology is very competitive and a desirable branch for US graduates. So competition will be very stiff. Since what I'm going to say is only for IMGs, you will not be competing with any of the US graduates. Does that make sense to you? Any questions? Comment below. Alright, let's move on to the next thing. On the ABA website, you have to look specifically for alternate pathway for primary certification. Let's do that. The easiest way to find this is go to Google and say American Board of Anesthesiology alternate pathway for primary certification. The very first page that opens is actually from the official ABA website. Now if you look at the very first line, it says this: the alternate entry path program allows international medical graduates who are certified by the National Anesthesiology Organization in the country where they train and practicing anesthesiology in the US to qualify for entrance into our exam system for primary certification in anesthesiology. If you read this for the first time, it can get very confusing. Let me explain this to you. There are two things here. Now the first thing is the anesthesiologist should be certified in any country outside the US. This could be their home country or this could be somewhere else. Let me give you an example. If you are from India, you should have completed anesthesia residency in India or from any other country outside India except the US. This could be UK, Singapore, Australia, any others. The second thing is practicing anesthesiology in the USA. You must be thinking, how is this even possible without doing residency, right? Let me explain this to you. This can take many different forms. As I'm writing here on the whiteboard, there is something called a research fellowship for which you do not need an USMLE. This research fellowship is a job that's offered to internationally trained anesthesiologists in any hospital or university where they work under a faculty anesthesiologist doing research, helping with research work. Number two is you can actually become a faculty in the US without USMLE. How is this possible? This is because there are many people who come into the US as visiting professors. How do I know this? Because I have seen people doing this. Again, this will not make you board certified, but you can work as a visiting professor for a certain number of years in the US with the premise that you're actually going back to your country. The third thing is you can actually do a clinical fellowship for which a USMLE is required. Now this fellowship will be in the same place that has US graduates doing fellowship. The difference is they would be board certified, but you're not board certified. This will give you a pathway to enter into this alternate pathway for primary certification where you can be board certified. Now, all these options can also happen in Canada, meaning you could be doing a clinical fellowship or a faculty in Canada, but not a research fellowship. If you're a US graduate, then they look at various things when entering anesthesiology like sports, community activities, voluntary work, well-roundedness, etc., etc. However, these things rarely exist for IMG. This pathway does not look into all those things. However, during anesthesia, you should be outstanding Now, outstanding here is the keyword. This is specified by the ABA that you have to be an outstanding anesthesiologist. Now, what does this mean? This means, for example, if you're doing teaching activities, it's just not teaching someone, but excelling in it and winning awards at conference. The thing that will greatly help is having conference presentation, research publications, etc. I trained from the best place in the world, PGI Mir Chandigarh. By the time I finished residency, I had about 30 publications. If someone is looking at your CV in the US, this could be me or someone else, if you have publication in what is called as predatory journals, which just publish stuff no matter what you write, this is not going to help you. We know if you publish in these journals, the expectation is you do some quality work and publish in quality journals. You don't have to publish in New England Journal of Medicine or Nature, but it has to be a decent journal that actually people read and not just some stupid thing that gets published somewhere that nobody reads or cares about. So far, if you're finding any value with the video, don't forget to hit the like button. Well, it does matter what country you're from, meaning what country you did your anesthesia residency from. When I did my alternate pathway, there was only what is called as a research pathway, meaning you have to have an established research in order to become a faculty in the US through this pathway. And that was the only option available. Then there was an ABA press release and they said they now actually offer two pathways. I have left the press release in the description below. The first is Research and Fellowship Pathway and the second is the Clinician Educator Pathway. It is important for you to know the differences. First, let's look at the Research and Fellowship Pathway. This is good for candidate from any country. Now, if I scroll down to this page on the ABA website, it clearly specifies what are the requirements to be in this pathway. Now, this is what is expected of you. You have to be internationally trained, of course, with 4 years or 3 years of anesthesia-specific postgraduate medical education training. What this means is, your anesthesia training has to be at least 3 years. Now I say this because there are many courses like diploma which is offered for 2 years and these candidates are not eligible to be in this pathway. Now there is also another certification, for example in India, called DNB. Now you might be wondering, are DNB candidates good for this pathway? The ABA does not specify anything related to MD or DNB. However, I personally think the DNB candidates, based on the places they're offered, they do not achieve that amount of excellence in education or research to actually break into the pathway. So you're more likely to be successful if you have an MD from a reputed place, PGI, AIMS, or any other reputed place, not only in India, but anywhere around the world to be eligible for this pathway. Now the second thing the ABA says is, it says you should have a pre-existing track record of scholarship as represented by the scholarship of discovery, dissemination, and application. The scholarship of discovery is accomplished by obtaining peer-reviewed funding or by publication of original research in peer-reviewed journals. The scholarship of dissemination is accomplished by publication of review articles in peer-reviewed journals or chapters in textbooks. The scholarship of application is accomplished by publication of case reports or clinical series at local, regional, or national professional and scientific society meetings. High quality ongoing scholarship is critical to acceptance into the AEP program. In summary, what this means is you have to be active in presenting at conferences, be active, getting involved in research. It's easier if you're in the US, but even if you're not in the US, you have to be proactive in getting involved with research. And then try to publish quality work in quality journals. All this will make your application very competitive to get into this AEP program. Now these are the things expected of you. Now what happens after you're selected is the next bullet points that's provided by the ABA. You should have an active clinical appointment for a minimum period of 4 years after enrolling in the AEP program. Now this is obvious once you get selected. into the program, you and the hospital or the university will work with you to offer you a clinical appointment. But this happens after you're selected, not before. Now have the chair of the anesthesiology department that sponsor them submit a 4-year plan co-signed by the physician for prospective approval by our credentials committee. We must receive the 4-year plan no later than 4 months before the department enrolls the physician in the AEP program and the 4-year period of continuous experience commences. Now here, what the ABA is saying is, you have to work with the department chair who is offering you a position. You and the chair write a 4-year plan, submit it to the ABA, and the ABA has to formally approve it. And then your timeline within the AEP program of 4 years kicks in. Again, this happens after you're selected by the hospital or the university. So there are 2 steps, as you can see. One is you apply, you get selected by the hospital. The second thing is the ABA approves your application and you start the program. The next point is ABA says demonstrate discovery of new knowledge in the specialty, excellence in teaching, and excellence in clinical anesthesiology during the 4-year period specifically designed and identified for the physician. Now this comes as a part of the 4-year ABA plan and everything would be described there. So you just follow that 4-year plan and make sure you satisfy all the requirements so you become eligible to be board certified. Now let's look at the CE pathway. The CE, as I said, stands for Clinician Educator pathway. The CE pathway is good for candidates for only certain countries. This includes, the list is here, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Ireland, Singapore, South Africa, UK, Europe. Now, the ABA says applications for candidates trained and certified in other countries will be considered on a case-by-case basis. If I read between the lines, you're less likely to be successful in this pathway if you have trained from another country. The ABA says these countries are good because these countries have existing training and certification requirements that are currently acceptable for entry into the AE program. But here's the thing. Let's say if you're not from any of this country but are certified in this country, you still become eligible for this pathway. An example, if someone is trained from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, China, anywhere else, they go to South Africa, Canada, Ireland, Singapore, they certify in anesthesia, they become an anesthesiologist there, then those people will be eligible for this CE pathway. Now here are the specific requirements, which is kind of very similar to what is there for the research and fellowship pathway. Let's see if something is different. Number 1 is, it says be internationally trained with 4+ years of postgraduate medical education, same as before. Next thing, have a letter of support from the sponsoring program's chair and program director. Same as before. Now, because this is a clinician educator pathway, this pathway more likely will be heavy on education, which means you would be actually dealing with more of educating residents and fellows. So for this reason, the residency or the fellowship program director also has to support your application, provide a letter. The next thing is be board certified in anesthesiology from an ABA approved certifying body. Those are the countries that was mentioned before. The next thing is have a clinical appointment for a minimum period of 4 years after enrolling in the AEP program. Just like the research fellowship pathway, this comes after you've been selected into the program. Have an academic appointment in a department of anesthesiology with an ACGME approved residency, and should be an outstanding clinician educator in the field of anesthesiology. Have the sponsoring programs department chair and program director submit a 4-year mentoring plan for future academic development as a clinician educator, co-signed by the physician for prospective approval by our credentialing committee. This is the same as before. The final thing is demonstrate excellence in teaching and excellence in clinical care during the 4-year period specifically designed and identified for that particular physician. And these things happen after you've been selected. Now the next big question, after you know about these programs, how is this applicable to your situation? So where should you apply? Only programs which have structured education and academic activities can support the candidates. This means the program should have US residents or US fellows who are undergoing ACGME accredited training. So this is a key word, ACGME accredited training, meaning these hospitals have to be accredited by the accrediting agency called ACGME. Okay, these people can undergo training and then become board eligible. We're not talking about you as a candidate. I'm talking about US graduates going through accredited training in that particular hospital. This does not mean you will be a resident, but the requirement is that if there is a residency program or a fellowship program that is ACGME accredited, they would have an established teaching and academic curriculum that satisfies the ABA needs, your needs, and the hospital needs. Great. Now you know about all this. The question is where to find these programs. So I'm going to give a link to the website. You can see it on the screen here, and also I've left it in the description below. An easy way to find is just go to Google and say Residency Information by State, American Society of Anesthesiologists. This may not open in your country. It opens easily for me because I'm in the USA. But if it doesn't open, you can always leave the link. That's the whole purpose of leaving the link. And then once you open this website, you will see the residency information from all states. For example, it starts with Alabama, where it says University of Alabama in Birmingham. Then is Arkansas, University of Arkansas in Little Rock, and so on and so forth. So it talks about all the states. For example, California has a lot more programs, whereas some states have less programs. So you can see these programs, read about them. If you have any questions, put it in the comments below. I'll try to get to you as soon as possible. And then you go on and so forth and try to figure out a program you want to apply for. If you're able to find a place where they already have such candidates or had in the past, you're in luck. Life becomes a lot easier. Each hospital can have a maximum of 4 such candidates. When I did this program, they had a limit of 2 candidates during one time, but now it has grown so much, they have a restriction, or rather they have a limit of 4 candidates. This is a 4-year program, structured like residency, although you're technically not working like a resident. There can be all 4 candidates the same year or 1 in each year. It depends on how much the sponsoring institute is willing to support. Now, how do you apply? Who should you apply to? You should apply to the chair or head of Department of Anesthesia, asking them if they can support you as a candidate into the AA program, specifying what all achievements you have done in your CV and how you qualify for the program and how you can bring academic or teaching excellence into USA from outside. Once you apply and let's say you get interviewed, you get selected by the hospital then submits a 4-year plan to American Board of Anesthesiology. The premise is that you cannot change the hospital for 4 years. This 4 years can be structured as a fellow, a researcher, or as a faculty anesthesiologist with full privileges of practicing independently, or a combination of this. This entirely depends on your CV and how much support the hospital is willing to offer. Now the ABA has to formally approve the plan. You will have to take semi-annual and annual reviews. There will be yearly exams, just like US residents, although you're not a resident. And once after 4 years, you satisfy all the requirements, you become board eligible. After this, you take the anesthesiology boards, which consists of written boards and oral boards, and voila, you're board certified anesthesiologist in the USA. There's always this important question about visa. If you have any questions so far, don't forget to post in the comments below. In my experience, all these people who have come through the AAP pathway into the US have received an H-1B visa. Now the H-1B visa is a temporary worker visa that is offered to people who hold professional level degrees. The difference between H-1B and J-1 is H-1B does not have the 2-year waiver restrictions of J-1. Disclaimer, I'm not a visa expert, I'm not an attorney. However, I'm saying this based on all my personal experience. Now the H-1B, now people who come into the AEP pathway have successfully transitioned everyone I know of from H-1B into green card and being a citizen in the USA. So the hospital makes sure they do offer an H-1B, of course, depending on many other factors. And they try their best to support the green card or permanent residency application so you actually become successful. This usually happens once you become a faculty or you enter as a faculty. If you get into a program, this means you have an outstanding CV, and now with the USA Alternate Pathway program, this should in fact make it easier to get green card quickly. There are countries like India, China, and many other Asian countries who actually have a huge backlog for getting green card, and that process typically gets expedited, in my experience at least, through EB1. Now if you have a spouse, they're eligible for an H4 or EAD. This is a topic for a different video. How about USMLE? This is a big question. There are 3 steps for USMLE, presently known as USMLE Step 1, Step 2 CK, and Step 3. The Step 2 CS, which is a simulated patient-based exam, is presently on hold due to the current situation, and I'm not sure what the next steps for that is. Now, the USMLE is an expensive exam. The general scare is that it is tough, but it is not. There is a strategic way to prepare. And if you have any questions about USMLE, do post in the comments below. I can say this is not a difficult exam. You can read all about USMLE on a website called usmle.org. Again, link in the description below. Just briefly, Step 1 is a one-day exam. It is divided into 7 60-minute blocks and is typically administered in a 1 8-hour testing session. The number of questions per block can be a little variable, but approximately is about 40. And the total number of items overall does not exceed 280. This exam is offered at Prometric Center and can be taken anywhere in the US or in your home country. I personally took this in Toronto, Canada, when I was living there. Now, Step 2 CK is a one-day exam. It is divided into 8 60-minute blocks and administered in 1 9-hour testing session. Again, the questions can be variable, but is approximately about 40. The total number of items on the overall exam usually will not go beyond 318. I again took this exam in Toronto. You can take this in your home country. The CS, which consisted of a simulated patient scenario, used to happen in 5 test centers and had to be taken in the USA, for which you will need a travel visa. I took mine in Philadelphia, and once you finish Step 1 and Step 2, you apply for ECFMG certification and you become ECFMG certified. Now, you will need all 3 steps because this is a must to get a full license. So some states require US or Canadian work experience of 2 to 3 years. If you already have that, you can start directly as a faculty into the AEP program with an independent license. If not, typically the other option kicks in, which is the research or fellowship options, through which you get US clinical work experience and be eligible to get a US full license. So my work experience in Canada helped me get an independent license straight away. Now, Step 3 consists of multiple choice questions, also known as items, plus a computer-based case simulation scenario. This is a 2-day exam. The first day of testing includes about 230 MCQs divided into 6 blocks, 60 minutes each for completion of each block. There are approximately 7 hours of test session on the first day, and then a little bit for breaks and tutorials. Now the second day will be a 9-hour session. This day of testing includes 180 multiple choice questions divided into 6 blocks of 30 items, plus a 7-minute simulated tutorial followed by 13 case simulation, each of which is allotted a maximum of 10 or 20 minutes of time for you to finish this. Now, Step 3 has to be taken in the USA. I took it in Buffalo, in New York, but you have the option of choosing at many different centers in the USA. The cost for Step 1 and Step 2 is approximately $1,000 each, plus a $200 surcharge for each if you take outside USA or Canada. I have left the link about ECFMG through which you apply for this in the link below. Cost for step 3 is approximately $900, and this has to be taken, as I mentioned earlier, only in the USA. Now, there are options to get sponsored for writing USMLE exams, so you don't have to pay anything for the USMLE exam. This is a topic for a different video. Well, so far, if you had any value with this video, don't forget to hit that like button. If you're interested to know how to become a doctor in India, I have left a link here. This consists of 5 simple steps for beginners as to how you become a doctor and finally an anesthesiologist and even a pediatric anesthesiologist. Make sure to check this out. Also, I have left a lot of videos related to anesthesia and surgery to see what an anesthesiologist does. If you're interested to know, check them out in the description below. Are you interested in videos on any other topics related to this? Make sure you leave in the comments below so I can make a video for you. Take care, stay safe. I'll talk to you soon.